Welcome. We are visiting the provisions of Code of Criminal Procedure regarding trial in a sessions court. The responsibility to conduct prosecution case is vested in the public prosecutor. On the first date of hearing, public prosecutor is to make it explicit as to what charge he is pressing for the trial and on what evidence he will be proving the charge. Now, if the court comes to the conclusion that charge is to be framed, and if charge is framed, then the case is put up for the prosecution evidence. Now, it is here, in fact, the prudence, experience, knowledge of the defense counsel comes into play, because the prosecution witnesses are to be cross-examined by the defense counsel. Therefore, we as a criminal lawyers shall feel that our intelligence, our wisdom, our experience is meant for having a lawful cross-examination of the prosecution witnesses so that we can bring a truthful justice under the trial. Now see, as the evidence is to be led by the public prosecutor, so the sequence, the procedure is provided in Chapter 10 of the Indian Evidence Act. It is regarding the examination of witnesses. Chapter 10 of the Indian Evidence Act, from section 135 to 166, is in a way a complete code of examination of the witnesses. The trial, in fact, means this part, the central part, the core of the trial is the examination of the witnesses. Here, as the public prosecutor is vested with the responsibility to conduct the prosecution case, therefore, if we are not in the footsteps of a public prosecutor, then criminal lawyer's role essentially, primarily, is going to be as a defense counsel. Now see, this chapter be taken as a code. It is a code of the examination of witnesses. Section 135 provides order of production and examination of witnesses. 136 says judge to decide as to the admissibility of evidence, and then it is examination in chief, cross-examination and re-examination. Now, the order of production of the witnesses and examination of the witnesses as well is settled here in this thing, in these provisions. And 135 is with respect to this. If we want to have an idea as to what is the basic role and aim of the defense counsel, then let us put it. Accused is put under a charge. Accused is implying by denying the charge the truth is otherwise, and false charge has been laid against him. See, we as a defense counsel, what we have to do, we have to bring the truth before the court, and we have to transcend through the falsehood of the charge. Now see, what is the aim and objective of a cross-examination? Let us go to the scriptures. Let us go to the ancient wisdom. It says, Kim Satyara hoiye, Kim kude tutte pal. It is Japji Sahib. The whole urge is how my truth is to come in full expression, and how illusion caused because of the falsehood of the charge is to be transcended. Therefore, the criminal liar is to be spiritual enough to believe formally that truth is to prevail. And once truth is to prevail, then truth is to be brought on the record. Now, witnesses will depose. Now, once witnesses have deposed, they are to be cross-examined. Cross-examined with the aim to bring the truth, and also as a step, as a consequence, to destroy the falsehood, the cover of falsehood. See how delicate is the responsibility. So cross-examination is full expression of the wisdom, maturity, experience of the defense counsel. Which question is to be put? Which question is not to be put? About what we have to be more explicit, about which we have to be silent. How much information is required to be asked and to be obtained, where we have to have a stop. These all are the questions with respect to which it is only the experience, wisdom, and knowledge of the defense counsel will determine. The accused is fully dependent upon the wisdom, experience, knowledge of the counsel. So the counsel is to be knowledgeable. Counsel should have a wisdom. The experience of the counsel should play the role of a light. The one is to get a light as a defense counsel from one's wisdom, experience, and knowledge as to what is to be asked, what information is to be obtained from the witness. Now, in this context, let us be through the provisions. The provisions as these are, beginning with 135. Section 135 of Chapter 10 of the Indian Evidence Act is order of production and examination of witnesses. The order in which witnesses are produced and examined shall be regulated by a law and practice for the time being relating to the civil and criminal procedures respectively, and in the absence of any such law, by the discretion of the court. Therefore, the discretion of the court is to fulfill the vacuum. If at any point of the procedure regarding order of production and examination of witnesses, if there is a silence anywhere, then that silence is to be expressed in the form of a discretion of the court. However, wherever law provides, then there is no discretion left. So let us now be through the other provisions of this code to see how much law has already determined in this aspect. 136, just to decide as to admissibility of evidence. Now see, whether the evidence is to be admitted or not is a very big aspect. And this aspect, as we had seen, is covered in chapter 11, the last chapter, and single section 167, which says if there is incorrect admissibility or incorrect inadmissibility, then that in itself is not going to be a cause for fresh trial. Therefore, here itself, in this chapter of examination of witnesses, it is provided that judge is to decide as to the admissibility of evidence, and it is here where the defense counsel is to be very vigilant. Defense counsel, if is not attentive, if is not conscious enough about the admissibility or otherwise of the evidence, then subsequently he will have the limitations of section 167, which provides that it will not give a cause for a fresh trial. Therefore, defense counsel shall, from the very beginning of the statement, examination chief of the witness itself, to be cautious what is to be permitted, what is to be requested to the court to permit the prosecutor to lead an evidence or otherwise, and it is as such specifically provided that judge is to decide. So the defense counsel is to determine its own role and is to be alert and conscious enough. Then the next section provides that examination chief, the examination of witnesses by the party who calls him shall be called the examination chief. So it is a definition. A party is having a witness, and when he will examine him, it will be called the examination chief. The examination of a witness by the adverse party will be called his cross-examination. It's explicit, re-examination. The examination of a witness subsequent to cross-examination by a party who called him shall be called a re-examination. So, after cross-examination as well, the party feels that there are certain information following for the first time or otherwise uncorroborated or having some other relevance or irrelevance during cross-examination, then the first party, it can have a right to re-examination, but however it is all subject to, again, the order of the court, with the permission of the court. And even after the re-examination, again the same situation may arise, that some new information may follow, or some other questions of admissibility, irrelevancy, or other situations may arise. And even then, after re-examination as well, there will be a right to cross-examination. And this sequence will continue. So, law is not putting any condition for having examination chief only once, cross-examination only once, but it is a continuing process. Every statement as examination in chief is to be subjected to cross-examination, and every new information, etc., aspects coming for the first time during the cross-examination will become the original statements like, and that will be cross-examined. So it is in the form of re-examination, and in re-examination as well, situation will become as if it is a examination chief, and this will continue. Where the stop is to be there, it all will depend upon facts and circumstances of each case and in respect of each witness. Therefore, the duty of the defense counsel is a continuously of conscious alert or at each and every aspect, because if this opportunity is not properly availed and the stage is over, then subsequent thereto, the prayer for fresh trial is not going to be permissible under law, however, subject to the other conditions of Section 167 and other provisions of law. But substantively, it would mean that every examination in chief, every cross-examination, every re-examination, and the questions of admissibility, etc., are going to be continuously being put under the seal of the orders of the court, and therefore one can't take it that subsequently it will be opened. It is going to be a closed situation. One is to be alert. Then it is the order of examinations. It is provided witnesses shall be first examined in chief and then cross-examined, and all situations are there. The direction of re-examination, as we have already pointed out, is to be obtained from the court, and it is depending upon the facts and circumstances of each case. See, in section 139, it is provided cross-examination a person called to produce a document. In many ways, there are certain situations in which the witness being called is not to make his personal statement with respect to the facts of his knowledge, but he is merely a witness to produce the documents. Now, in that situation as well, the circumstances may arise to have a cross-examination, and it is this situation which is being covered in section 139. Then the next phase and stage is when there is a witness to character. Now, character is a specific domain of evidence, specific domain of information. Like documents, the character aspect as well has been classified as one complete zone, one complete domain of the evidence. And it is in this respect, it is being said specific witnesses to character may be cross-examined and re-examined. So normally it appears that a character aspect is such which is not going to be subject matter of cross-examination or re-examination. To dispel that or to otherwise make it explicit that this zone of information as an evidence as well is like any other evidence of a witness, and that witness of character as well can be subjected to cross-examination, re-examination. Now, the manner in which the witness is to be examined or cross-examined. Here is a definition of a leading question. Any person suggesting the answer which the person putting it wishes or expects to receive is called a leading evidence. Now see, one is put in such a form that it implies that the person asking the question, person examining, wants that this answer shall be given, the particular answer shall be given by the witness. Then this type of examination is called, these type of questions put during examination, cross-examination, re-examination are called leading questions when they must not be asked. So first it is a definition. Now 142. It is a legislative prohibition. The legislative prohibition is leading questions must not, if objected to by the adverse party, be asked in examination in chief or in re-examination except with the permission of the court. See, here the manner of examination has been specifically legislated. Leading questions are not permitted in examination in chief and re-examination except with the permission of the court. But cross-examination is a different situation. That means this legislative prohibition of section 142 as it is, the same is only in respect of examination in chief and re-examination. This restriction is not there with respect to the cross-examination aspect. Now, therefore, the art of examination and re-examination is of different generic than the art of cross-examination. Now, in examination and re-examination, leading questions are prohibited. Therefore, if the prosecutor or if the first party is putting the leading questions, then objection is to be raised, because it is said, if objected by the adverse party, if the defense counsel does not object the leading question, then it would amount to raising no objection being raised, or impliedly giving a consent, or if there is a permissibility. Therefore, the defense counsel is to be very, very careful and very conscious to see that as and when the leading question is put in examination chief or re-examination, then the same shall be objected. If not objected, it would amount to that same is permitted, it is consented, and so it will become admissible and lawful. Now, section 143, it says when leading questions can be asked, it is made specific, it is clarified that leading questions may be asked in cross-examination. It is implied from 142 when it is said leading question need not be asked in examination in chief and re-examination, and cross-examination has not been mentioned there. It could have been implied that leading questions are not prohibited during cross-examination. However, to make it explicit, section 143 specifies that leading questions may be asked in cross-examination. Therefore, the defense counsel, with his wisdom, with his experience, with his knowledge, can get an information from a witness during cross-examination by putting the leading questions, means by having the generic of the nature of the answers which he expects shall be given in the questions being put. So suggestions form, suggestive forms, the assertive forms of the questions, so that particular information may be facilitated, but it all depends upon where the leading questions will work or where leading questions will not work. But however, during cross-examination, the leading questions are permitted. Therefore, the art of cross-examination is having one specific generic tool, and it is in the form of the leading questions. So the defense counsel, with their maturity, with their wisdom, with their experience, with their understanding of the psychology of the witness and other maturity, etc., aspects of the witness, may use this tool, and by this permissibility, legislative permissibility, can elicit particular information from the witness. The section 144 goes a step ahead and it maintains evidence as to matters in writing. Now, there are many times that some information already stands reduced in writing. It may be in the form of previous statements, it may be in the form of the documentation, or in any other situations, maybe previous depositions as witnesses, examinations in previous proceedings, previous trials, etc., etc. Now, any witness may be asked whilst under examination whether any contract, grant, other deposition of property as to which he is giving evidence was not contained in a document, and if he says that it was, or if it is about to make any statement as to the contents of any document which in the opinion of the court ought to be produced, the adverse party may object to such evidence being given under such document is produced or until facts have been proved. Therefore, the whole situation is when the witness is deposing with respect to the contents of a document, and if document is not available at that time in the court, which may be put to a witness, then in that situation, the adverse party may object. And the effect of such object will be that first, that document be summoned or document be made available, and only then the deposition of the witness regarding contents of the documents may be permitted, and that again will be subject to all other legislative enactments as to the proof of the documentary evidence. So how documents are to be proved is well legislated in the form of documentary evidence. However, still, if the document is not available and witness want to state something with respect to the contents of the documents, then objection is made tenable. It is legislative prohibition for permitting a witness to depose in any form with respect to the contents of a document which is not available at that time. Step ahead, cross-examination as to previous statements in writing. Now, it is made specific that witness may be cross-examined as to previous statements made by him in writing or reduced into writing and relevant to matters in question without such writing being shown to him or being proved. See, the 144 is making a general restriction that deposition of a witness with respect to the contents of the document is not allowed unless the document is available. However, in cross-examination with respect to the previous statements, section 145 makes a different legislative provision. It is made specific as that witness may be cross-examined as to previous statements by him, even if the document is not available, shown to him or proved. But if it is intended to contradict him by writing, means if the witness is going to be contradicted in the form of a document with respect to his previous statement, then in that situation, it is being said that the document is to be proved. Something that way, section 144 and section 145 deserve to be read together, and it is here where the wisdom, experience, and knowledge of the defense counsel will play its definite role. In the next session, we will take up the aspect as to how, in this broad outline of the trial, substantive justice is to be approached. For it, we will begin with the preamble of the Constitution of India. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.